VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. It's the Friday edition. 2 days, almost to the hour at the time this will publish, to Vikings Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Falcons are favored to win by about 4 or 5 points, probably because the Vikings are starting a rookie quarterback. And we talked ad nauseum about that man, Jaren Hall, over the weekend when we presumed he would be the starter. Indeed, barring some really weird last-second announcement that Josh Dobbs is getting the nod, it's going to be the Jaren Hall show. And it'll be a pretty pivotal moment in game in Vikings history, because if this guy has it and looks marvelous, he could be the guy of the future. If he looks like garbage, then it'll probably be some sort of switch to Josh Dobbs or Nick Mullins in however many weeks. But that's what we're here to discuss, is Vikings Falcons and some of this Josh Dobbs stuff. I'm here with Dakota and Tyler Ireland, who join every Friday. Dakota, how are you?
I'm doing good. Convinced myself it was daylight savings time, so now I have to readjust again before adjusting once more, but I'm doing okay.
All right, let's talk some Vikings. Tyler, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How's it going, Dustin?
Not bad. All right, I'm going to pick your brain first, Dakota. So this panel is mighty optimistic about Jaren Hall, and I think you're even romantically smitten with him, Dakota. If I read Twitter correct, you can correct the record if that's not true, but that's the vibe that I got. But I want to hear your Josh Dobbs thoughts, because when we spoke Sunday evening into Monday, we didn't know Josh Dobbs was on the way. Bada bing, he basically came to the Vikings for free. Give me your Josh Dobbs thoughts. Hopefully we don't have to see the guy at all, but what would your mentality be if indeed we have to see him in the next month?
Well, first and foremost, yes, I think Jaren Hall is very attractive, although apparently he's married and I don't want to do that. But so one of the things that's really sticking out to me about him currently is that Kevin O'Connell went on the Pat McAfee show and talked specifically about how intelligent this guy is. And obviously we know he's like a rocket scientist, for lack of a better term, and clearly he's very gracious to be here. But like I said, KOC specifically mentioned that he's an intelligent guy. We look at Kirk Cousins, also a very intelligent guy. I think that personally, we shouldn't really be looking at his stats. Well, yes, he does have some fairly, I don't want to say impressive, but decent stats considering the teams that he's been playing for. To me, at this late in the season, it is all about how he is going to adjust to our scheme, to our plans, and how quickly he is able to get his mindset into our system, and how easily he is going to be able to integrate himself into some pretty big shoes. I mean, Jaren Hall has the same issue. Kirk Cousins has some very big shoes to fill. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to how does he keep himself from not getting too overwhelmed with how much we've got going on in our system. I mean, we kind of have the quarterback stream, especially with our wide receiver core. Run game does leave some stuff to be, desired there. And I think really it is all going to come down to how well Josh Dobbs is able to get over that sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm here, and mindset into the game, how quickly he's going to adjust. And, if Kevin O'Connell has trust in him, and I think I've said this a couple of times, I trust in Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell. If this is their guy, this is their guy.
Tyler, some of the all-22 footage of Josh Dobbs just does reveal some of the warts. He makes some bad throws, but that's going to happen when you're down to nubbins looking for a Kirk Cousins replacement. However, if you pull up just the basic 2023 highlights on YouTube, Josh Dobbs looks fantastic. It's hard to believe he was cast away by the Browns and the Lions in the last year. So I want to know from you, my friend, also optimistic about Jaren Hall. If we have to see Josh Dobbs, are you going to roll your eyes, or are you going to be excited?
Honestly, if we have to see Josh Dobbs, I would not be too optimistic, because that means something went very wrong with Jaren Hall, and you've got to throw in Josh Dobbs into the fire there. But as far as him as a player, he's a high-end backup quarterback, has played in a lot of different offensive systems. And if anyone's able to learn an offense on the fly, it would be him, 4.0 GPA. The guy's like an actual rocket scientist or something along those lines. He's very accurate on those short passes. I think he goes through his progressions well. just don't ask him to throw the ball deep. It's because he's just not going to replace Kirk in that department. And I don't even think Jaron Hall would either. But, Josh Dobbs is not a great deep thrower of the football, but what he can do is beat you with his legs. And I think that's the most exciting part about his game, because when a play breaks down, he's got that athleticism. And I believe he has more rushing touchdowns on the year than Alexander Madison, and just the Vikings offense as a whole. So, I mean, in terms of, rushing. So for an emergency quarterback, you could do a heck of a lot worse.
Okay. Yeah. No Vikings quarterback has rushed for 50 yards or more in a game since the 2012 playoffs, when Joe Webb was thrust into action because Christian Ponder was hurt. And curiously, if you do watch those Josh Dobbs YouTube highlights, he never throws deep. And I don't know if that's because the Cardinals don't do that around here. His scouting report coming out of Tennessee in 2017 said he could do it, said the arm strength was there. But, he doesn't get a whole lot of chances to start. And when he did with the Cardinals, he didn't throw it deep. Thankfully, Justin Jefferson's sweet spot is usually the intermediate range. So in theory, if Dobbs gets on the field, you shouldn't see, just doldrums in that department. But yeah, Dobbs was the solution in case Jaron Hall does not play competently this Sunday. And then, by the way, Nick Mullins is also chilling, probably coming off IR soon. Kevin O'Connell on the Pat McAfee show talked about how they ask a lot of their quarterback, and it just makes sense that Jaron Hall gets the nod out of the gate because he's familiar with it. Even though he was a QB3 when the depth chart was published 2 months ago, he wasn't supposed to play at all this year because if Cousins got hurt, it was supposed to be Mullins, but Mullins has a stress fracture in his back. And so here we are, looking for the Vikings' first the first Viking quarterback making his first start since 2014 when Teddy Bridgewater did it against these Falcons. Speaking of these Falcons, Dakota, give me your best breakdown of this game or your vibe going into it, plus at the end, your formal prediction.
Well, let's hope that Tyler Heineke doesn't have an agreement with the refs again to break exception, because that would really suck. No, going into this, it's really interesting. I decided to take a look at the Falcons O-line. Obviously, we've got a huge sort of spotlight on our defense right now, specifically with Danielle Hunter, Cam Bynum. And so I wanted to take a look at their O-line. And surprisingly, PFF has their O-line listed as a top 5, despite the fact that they let up, I believe, 6 sacks this last game and even a turnover with a lost fumble. So I'm really interested to see what our defensive line can do with this so-called top 5 offensive line. I think that it is really going to become a defensive game. I think a lot of it's, I mean, again, we've got Jaron Hall, who, yes, he did come in and played oh my gosh, what is the word? Impressively, semi-impressively coming off completely cold. And he does have, again, he has some very high expectations to fill. But I really think it's going to come down to how our defense is able to break down their offensive line and avoid being tackled by referees.
Yep, that was the reason the Washington game last year when Taylor Heineke stayed close, is because for some reason the ref decided to play free safety and got in the middle and created a touchdown for the Commanders. Prediction, Vikings or Falcons, and what score, Dakota?
I'm going to go Vikings. I think it's going to be kind of a very tight score. I'm going to go 21-17.
Okay. And in case I forget, I have the Vikings winning 16-13. I completely agree with you that it's going to be defensive. And that's mainly because I trust this defense over the last month. It's totally flummoxed the bad teams, and it's held serve against the good teams, and actually looked somewhat good against the 49ers, who at the time were considered the best team in the sport. Tyler, your breakdown, Vikings, Falcons, and at the end, a prediction.
Yeah, so obviously it's going to be the battle of the 2 former backup quarterbacks. Taylor Heineke is backing up Desmond Ridder before he was eventually announced as the full-time starter. Ritter's been struggling, so in comes Heineke. And then, of course, with Hall and the Cousins injury, he's going to be thrust into his first professional full game as a rookie. So excited to see how that goes. But if there's one man I'm watching the most, if I'm the Vikings, it's Bijan Robinson. This isn't going to be a game where the quarterbacks are going to be asked to do a lot. They're just going to have to manage the game efficiently. So at least for the Falcons, it's going to be a heavy dose of Bijan. There's a good chance that Drake London doesn't play. They've got the two tight ends, so I expect a lot of heavy tight end personnel and a lot of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson. So yeah, it's just stopping that run against Atlanta, and they're very effective at running the football under Arthur Smith. As far as a prediction for the game, I think it's going to be one of those games where it's just a bunch of back and forth field goals. Greg Joseph, Young Hoi Koo. I don't know. I would say if I have to do math in my head on the fly here, say winning team scores 5 field goals. So what, 15, and the losing team scores 4, so 12. So 15-12 Vikings.
Oh, so it's all field goals.
Yeah, all field goals.
Well,
why not?
Yeah, any way you can get the win. These unsung storyline of the next 2 weeks is these two teams will probably be nibbling at the 7th seed of the wild card, which I think is a reasonable goal for the Vikings to get after Cousins get the 7th or 6th seed. So it's not exactly like, well, the Vikings lose, that's okay. It's really not, because the Falcons will probably be in that 8-9 range. The Saints next week look like a 9-8 team to the max. And so these next 2 games are really important for tiebreakers when we get to early January and tiebreaker scenarios. What I'm really excited about is just seeing Jaren Hall in general, because this is a first of its kind thing for the Vikings in quite some time, almost a decade. And I'm excited for the lead up. I want to know, can he handle the moment? And even if it's disappointing or he flat out stinks, at least we'll know. All right, well, we built this guy up too much. He doesn't quite have it. That's why he went to the 5th round. Conversely, if he looks like a baller, then you're into that realm of, oh God, have we found the guy? And I think that's where you essentially get to based on their performance at Atlanta. And I think it's a decent spot. He doesn't have to, let's say if we were going to Seattle or Jacksonville, we'd be like, oh God, this is going to be a big fat L. And I like it that it's Atlanta. It doesn't have to be this juggernaut. All right. Earlier this week, I asked my peers at Vikings territory to give me one bold prediction for the second half of the season, because at halftime of the Falcons game, that'll officially be the Vikings midpoint. And these are supposed to be outlandish. So I want to see what you guys came up with. Mine was whether it's due to Jaren Hall tweak of a calf or something. So for some reason, the Vikings are going to see Josh Dobbs, and I think he's going to steal their hearts. I think they're going to be like, holy, like, we're not used to a mobile quarterback. We haven't had that. We thought Teddy Bridgewater might be that. He wasn't that. The Vikings haven't seen an honest-to-goodness mobile quarterback since Joe Webb, and that was only a game or 2. And before that, Dante Culpepper. So I think he's going to do just enough eventually to make people go, this guy's pretty good, kind of like Case Keenum. Dakota, that was my bold prediction. I thought about predicting Greg Joseph goes perfect the rest of the way, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna get into that territory because I'm gonna screw it up. You tell me your bold prediction for the rest of the way for these Vikings.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a pretty high expectation for a guy who misses a lot of extra points. My bold expectation, I guess, or prediction, I guess, would be, I said this on the last show that I was on, so I'm going to say it again. We're going to be reliving that 2017-2018 season, and maybe this time even get past the NFC Championship game. That's my bold prediction.
So you have that much faith in City Hall?
I have that much delusion that I had. No, we've done it once before. I don't see why we can do it again. I really do have that much faith in Kevin O'Connell. I have that much faith in Jaren Hall and Josh Dobbs, excuse me. I think
you call him Josh Dobbs.
Josh Dobbs, yeah. I was gonna say. I think, especially looking at what went wrong last season, playoff wise, I think Kevin O'Connell has really studied, paid attention. I think that we've got the recipe. We just have to make sure that we don't lose to the Broncos and have them play Taylor Swift at us too.
Well, you like Taylor Swift, so
I do.
Love Taylor Swift. In fact,
don't lose to the Broncos.
That's fair. Well, that is a bold prediction. A 2017 redux, I think, is about as bold as it gets. So kudos for that one. Notably, Tyler, in the last 20 years, when the Vikings lost their QB1 unabashed quarterback one, Dante Culpepper was hurt 2005. The team then won 6 straight games. The next time Sam Bradford was injured for good against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. Bada bing, Case Keenum and the Vikings rattle off 8 wins. So this team has histrionics that suggest for some reason it gets really good when the quarterback goes down. What is it doesn't have to be anything about 2017 or Tyler Dobbs, but what is your bold prediction, sir, for the rest of the way?
Vikings legend Tyler Dobbs. But yeah, I would say my bold prediction actually applies to this game and the rest of the season.
Okay.
Dean Lowry has not been practicing the last couple of days. He's been struggling all season. Jonathan Bullard, great, against the run, but he doesn't really offer much as a pass rusher. So I think this specific game against the Atlanta Falcons is the game where rookie Jaquelin Roy cements himself as a starter on the defensive line.
I like that one. That's probably, even out of my own, that's probably my favorite one because it blends realism, but it's also quite bold because he too is a 5th rounder, just like his pal, Jaren Hall.
And you could even add to it a little bit and say that as the season progresses too, more and more of these rookies are going to get more and more snaps. That's not a super hot take, but like Mekhi Blackman, I think has played well. Obviously Jaren Hall is going to be thrust in there. And what if the Vikings running backs struggle so much that they say, what do we have in Dwayne McBride behind an actual offensive line and not just the preseason?
Yeah.
He didn't do well in the preseason, but you have nothing to lose, right? So why not get him in there, see what he can do?
And it's worth noting not about this time last year, but as they got in deeper into November, that's when they started to intermix Brian Asamoah because, everything was great in that season. At least wins and losses were great. Every game was a nail biter. But yeah, they did the same thing, started to see what they had in Asamoah, who I expect to probably start next year or at least get more snaps. Hopefully Brian Flores is still in the house. All right, Dakota, where can we find you on socials?
You can find me at Kirk's Minivan on Twitter. Every time it makes us laugh. Every time.
It does.
Never changing it.
Yep.
But you can find me on Kirk's Minivan on Twitter and Western Dakota on Instagram and TikTok.
Fantabulous. And you, Tyler?
Tyler Ireland NFL on Twitter.
And you write, give me the roll call of the places you write.
Yes. Daily Norseman and Purple PTSD.
Fantastic. All right. So we all are predicting a narrow Vikings win. Tyler has all field goals. Oh, man. I guess we're assuming that Joseph
better.
No, that's all right.
I didn't have anything on the fly, so I was like, it'd be fun if it was just nothing but field goals all game.
Yeah. By any means, when Kirk's out like this, by any means necessary, you take the win, even if it's all field goal. It's almost like every game at Soldier Field. Like, it doesn't matter how you get it done, just leave with a W. All right, we'll talk to you guys next Friday, perhaps about a 5-4 Vikings team. Or if it is not, we might be doing more of the Dobbs and Mullen stuff. But you have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Later.